Welcome back to a new edition of GrokTALK, brought to you by Grok Media LLC and GraniteGrok.com. Today we're talking about property taxes. Taxes suck. Taxation is theft. Property taxation is theft on an estimated value that may never be realized, which, in any other investment model, is actually illegal. You can't tax something at a value somebody else just randomly claims it's worth. You can only tax it on what it's worth. The same is true, or should be true, for property taxes. And there's a lot of noise about this now. States and governors are talking about banning them, but what do you replace them with? We're going to walk around that subject a little bit here and there, and I don't know if we're going to come up with any answers, but it's a stroll that needs to get taken. GrokTALK starts in less than 60 seconds. Not everyone can get up every day and look for ways to piss people off, but here at GraniteGrok.com, we do that almost every day. I can't tell you how many times someone's lost their SHIT and threatened to end us. But we're still here, pissing people off. It's almost like we enjoy it, and we've been doing it since 2006. That's almost 2 decades of news, politics, and opinion, and now podcasts, and we're just getting started. We believe in principles before parties and politicians. We defend free markets and individual liberty, and if that makes you mad, it makes us smile. We're like Grandma after she stopped caring what other people thought. If that sounds refreshing, you need to check us out. This is Steve McDonald for Granite Grok, and we'll keep shining the light on them for you. Welcome back to GrokTALK. The big news, of course, is that Governor DeSantis down in Florida has managed to leverage a constitutional referendum on the question of property taxes. Since the state does not benefit from those funds, it's a local issue. They're going to have the people of Florida vote to end them. And will they? Well, most people don't like them. And there's a lot of nuance to the subject, so we're going to try to talk about that a little bit and explore the nuance, some of the solutions. After all, municipalities who rely almost entirely on property taxes still want their money. They still need to be funded. They still have roads and bridges and police stations and fire stations and school systems, and they are all very greedy and hungry. So that's the question. Where do we start? How about we begin with this? From March of 2025, Much Ado About Property Taxes, written by moi. Property taxes are a problem. Towns and cities use imaginary value to charge taxes for profits you have not nor may ever realize, and the drunken sailors then spend it all and come back for more. Sometimes they pretend to cut taxes by lowering the rates per thousand unassessed value. Still, when calculated against inflated revaluations, your tax bill increases again based on unrealized gain. You might remember that term. We've heard a few Democrats suggesting taxing other investments based on unrealized gains as if they know what an investment might be worth in the future. That is why we don't allow it. Except for property taxes. The result in the current pricing boom is that people who bought a house for $100,000 are paying taxes on it as if it were worth $500,000 or more, and there's no guarantee they will even live to see a profit pilfered in their rising tax bills. My tax bill's gone up quite a bit. I think it's doubled since I moved here in the last 20 years. And yes, my house is worth 2.5 to 3 times more than what I paid for it. But is it really? I mean, I may end up leaving it to my kids, because they can't move out. They can't buy a house in this market. And part of the problem is property taxes. And of course, part of the property tax problem is public schools. But we could spend another episode on that topic, and perhaps we will. And actually, we have in the past, but it's always interesting to get it revisited. So the reason I brought this all up is because Governor DeSantis had done a segment on Fox News in which he talked about their little constitutional referendum. They were going to modify their constitution. Everybody in the state has to vote on it, and they're going to decide if they want to abolish property taxes. So let me share that with you here.
So we got to put it on the ballot, and the voters have to approve it. It's a constitutional issue in Florida. It's not something the state derives revenue for. It's a local issue. We're trying to focus on Florida homeowners and their primary resident. People that have Airbnbs or whatever, that's separate. Yeah. But your personal home, you shouldn't rent it from the government. You should own it. And, you're paying taxes for 50 years, but even for young families, it's become very difficult across this country to make ends meet. Wouldn't it be great if they were able to have home ownership without having the burden of property tax that? So that's coming to a ballot near you in November of 2026, and we need 60% of Florida voters to do it. And I think it's going to be very popular, but it's also something that's not an easy bar to reach when you have an election like that.
That all sounds fantastic. He did mention your primary residence as the property that would not be taxed. That kind of is an essential thing because business property will probably still be taxed and rental property will probably still be taxed. In fact, when I weighed in on this topic on X, somebody named Stink Eye had this to say about Governor DeSantis. He says, the money has to come from somewhere. Here is the way forward. Homestead property, property tax exempt. Individually owned second home long-term rental, property tax. Individually owned vacation rental, double property tax. Corporate owned, triple property tax. BlackRock, Vanguard, State Street, etc. owned, quadruple property tax. All right, well, I don't necessarily agree with that, but I did comment that the money has to come from somewhere, right? Where are we going to get the money from? And so I went and I looked, I asked the AI bots, I said, hey, here's a question. Where's that money going to come from? Where are we going to get all that money? Say your local budget is $1 gajillion, like it really matters because it feels that way. And you eliminate property taxes. And property taxes are the primary source of revenue for your town, along with maybe registrations and dog licenses and citations for speeding and stuff like that. You're not going to replace all that property tax money, right? Somebody's going to show up with a bill, maybe at your house, and say, hey, you owe these taxes. And it's not a property tax, but it's still a tax. I can just picture that. Anyway, so I asked Grok. I said, hey, Grok, what do you think? And the answer reads something like this. Local governments rely heavily on property taxes to fund essential services like education, public safety, infrastructure, and public health. I find it interesting that Grok thinks public education is the first thing that is an essential thing for a town to fund, when in fact they are so bad at it. And honestly, the more money we give them, the worse they get. Anyway, no, that's Grok. So in a hypothetical scenario where property taxes were made illegal, they would need to diversify and expand other revenue sources to replace the lost funds, which currently account for 72% of local tax revenue nationwide. This could involve shifting burdens to consumption or income-based taxes, increasing user fees, seeking more intergovernmental aid, or introducing new levies where legally permitted by state law, as local taxing authority is often constrained by states. So, yeah, okay, well, here's what it says. Increase sales and consumption taxes. Local governments could raise or expand sales taxes on goods and services, including general retail sales or targeted excise taxes. That would have to be a pretty big tax, and it would be different for every town, wouldn't it? And that's kind of some kind of chaos nobody wants to deal with. They say that, taxes on alcohol, gasoline, tobacco, utilities, hotel stays. In my state, that stuff's all handled at the state level. Pros, easy to administer, piggybacked on state sales taxes. We don't have those in New Hampshire, but you may. Captures revenue from non-residents, tourists, and commuters. We do that, and we could do more of that, but that's not the answer. The cons are that it's highly regressive, hitting lower income households harder as they spend a larger share of income on taxed items. The second suggestion, implement or expand local income taxes where state laws allow. I'm going to go with no. I'm not even going to read that one. 3, boost user fees and service charges. Charge directly for services like water, sewer, trash collection, parks, parking, and public transit. I'm already getting billed personally for water. Trash collection is optional. We bring our stuff to the dump, but obviously they could do that if you wanted to. Pros, ties cost to usage, benefit principle, encourages sufficient resource use, less politically controversial than broad-based taxes. Cons can, again, be regressive. And then, of course, you're adding administrative costs, billing, and collection, which, of course, sucks everything up. And then that entire administrative beast just gets bigger and bigger and bigger until it eats everything, and you have to double and triple the tax. And nobody much likes that. The fourth thing they suggest is expand licenses, permits, and other taxes. Increase fees for business licensing, building permits, and other regulatory approvals, plus miscellaneous taxes like severance taxes on resources or franchise fees from utilities. This is again from the AI. I also checked ChatGTP, so hang on for that one. Um, Target specific activities or industries. Cons, narrow bases may not replace large property tax shortfalls. None of this is even going to come close. And if you start taxing businesses and all sorts of stuff, obviously, why would they bother coming to your municipality or your state? Although it would create an interesting environment where businesses might decide to pick towns that had lower ones than higher ones. This is utter chaos. Again, it's like saying towns can ban concealed carry, and then like from town to town to town, you don't even know if you can drive 10 miles or 20 miles without breaking the law than being within the law. It's just stupid. Seek more intergovernmental transfers and grants. No, 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 just no. We do not want top down control. Issue bonds or borrow. Well, there's really no reason to do that because you're still going to have debt service. You're going to have interest. It's ridiculous. So that's that. What did ChatGTP have to say? I did, by the way, ask a couple people if they wanted to come on the show and talk about this, and I haven't got a response yet. Apparently, everybody who's talking about getting rid of property taxes or lowering property taxes doesn't quite have a plan ready, or they don't want to share it with us. So we'll just leave it at that. I asked ChatGTP the same question, and it said, "Hey, nice thought experiment. Good one. If property taxes were suddenly illegal or permanently struck down, local governments would still need money to provide schools, police, roads, and services. Once again, schools first." I don't know about these AI large language models. Actually, I do. And so do you. All right. So their main alternatives, what local government could use: local sales taxes, local income or payroll tax, a business tax or business license fee, user fees and service charges. These are all the same things. It's just broken out differently. And it's a little easier to read in ChatGTP, if I have to be honest, than it was in Grok. Utility and franchise fees, excise taxes, as in sin taxes, special assessments and benefit districts, impact fees, development charges, public asset monetizing and leasing, bonds, increased borrowing, creative value capture tools. What is that? Tax increment financing, TIF, betterment levies, highway transportation value capture, congestion pricing. I don't like any of these ideas. Fines, penalties, and regulatory fees, none of which are ever going to raise enough money. It gives you some key legal and practical constraints, equity and distributional concerns, like I give a crap about equity or what any AI model thinks it means. Transitional strategy, how a locality might practically proceed. Okay, let's look at this. Immediate measures, modest fee increases, utility franchise fee adjustments, tighten collection and enforcement. Why don't we just cut the size of government? How about that? I mean, especially the school systems. I keep saying this. There's got to be a way we can do it. Put it out to bid. Get private businesses to compete to run your school district for a fraction of the cost you're paying now. And I guarantee you, the town still owns all the buildings, right? They just sort of lease the property and they have to show results. They have to prove that they can educate your children for $7,000 a year, whatever it is, instead of 20, 30, or 40,000, which is ridiculous for a college, let alone a public school. And you would immediately reduce a large sum of the amount of money needed to be collected in taxes. And you would also free up some resources to give it to useful parts of your local government, like the police and the fire department and the Department of Public Works. So anyway, there's no answer to this. As far as I can tell, after looking and scrounging and not getting good responses from people who I thought might have some input, and maybe they will, maybe they were busy, maybe they missed my message. That's fine. I get tons of email too, and I can't answer everybody, and I can't do everything people ask me to do. So I completely understand that it's not their problem. Well, it will be their problem, especially if we try to approach it the way Florida has. Municipalities need to find money for some services, right? If you ask the average libertarian, you're like, well, a dirt road at the end of my driveway doesn't have to be lighted. Maybe it needs to be plowed. That's, you could probably figure that out yourselves if you really had to. Traffic lights, stop signs, police and fire. things like that. But there's a lot of stuff the government does that's just a complete waste of time and money. Obviously, they have to manage licensing, car registrations, all sorts of stuff like that, piddly stuff, but that shouldn't cost a small fortune. Again, education is the thing that is killing property tax owners, and the fact that property is being taxed at an estimated rate when in fact it should only be taxed at the last rate at which it was purchased. And I think we need to make some exceptions. We could definitely do some things about older people who've been in their homes, who own them, not having to pay a gajillion dollars in taxes. I mean, maybe a tiny little stipend fee, a couple $1,000s a year tops. People who own their homes are being driven out of them. Just like Governor DeSantis said, these people worked and paid taxes every year, perhaps on income, perhaps to the federal government. They paid property taxes to the state for years and years and years. And now they own their home and they can't afford to live there because the estimated property tax is so high, they end up losing a home that they never really owned because they're just basically leasing it from the state, which is completely absurd. And I don't know, I think the founders would rebel. I think they would have a revolution and they would march on, the state government, the state capital, which, by the way, is in the Constitution of the state of New Hampshire. So let's keep that in mind. But again, if you're, retired on limited income, why the hell are you paying property taxes on a property that you've been taxed on for decades, very likely? And it's just absurd. And then they want to come and take it from you because you can't pay that tax. And what happens? Some bank comes along, scoops it up, sells it to somebody else, and then they have to pay that tax on that property forever and ever and ever. So at this point, it seems like an intractable situation, and it's intractable in a lot of different ways. For example, one of the first public posts I ever wrote at NH Insider was about how I thought property taxes were, in fact, a superior way to tax because people got a bill in their mailbox twice a year with a big number on it. And when they saw the number, they thought back about, well, what am I getting out of this? What am I paying for? What is the net result of this investment I'm being forced to make into the town? And if I don't make it, they're going to come and take my house. And so it gets people a little bit more involved, at least at the time. Total tax burden in New Hampshire is still one of the lowest in the country, even though our property taxes are in the top 10, I think, for highest. But that's our only tax, really. We never had an income tax. We got rid of our interest and dividends tax. We're lowering our business taxes. And the thing that's supposed to follow that is that the people doing all this great work getting rid of these taxes now needs to cut the size of government so that the government doesn't need to raise those taxes to continue operating. This is the same thing that has to happen at the local level. And it's a complex question. Government doesn't want to shrink. People who work for the town don't want to lose their jobs. And they're going to say, oh my God, I'm going to lose my job. And I'm like, fuck you, I'm going to lose my house. How about that? I apologize for using such coarse language, but that's what's happening to people. And something has to change. And with any luck, we've started a conversation. It's a complex conversation. There are definitely some nuances, as I said in the opening. And, let's start with senior citizens, people over 60 something who own their homes. Stop taxing them. Just stop. All right? There's just stop. And that's not just because I'm almost retirement age. I've been paying taxes on all my properties my whole life. I have given so much money to the town I live in. I could probably buy a really, really nice house somewhere else. Maybe Florida, especially if they get rid of the property tax. How about that? Competition, state laboratories. That's what federalism is all about. All right, I've created more questions than I've answered, but I've been doing this long enough. I'm going to just stop right here, leave it open to everybody else. And please email steve@granitegrok.com if you want to. It's spelled like this over here, GROK, steve@granitegrok.com. Send me your thoughts, send me your ideas. Maybe you found something or somebody has some brilliant idea about how to proceed with this situation. But I think property taxes I don't think people are really willing to put up with them much longer. And some things are going to change. And we don't know what those are yet. But we're looking forward to the conversation. And of course, thanks again for watching. Check out the morning update Monday through Friday, sometimes on weekends. Tons of new content every single day at granitegrok.com. We are here. We are defending free speech, and we are doing it without any undue outside influence, which not many other outlets can say. So, all right. Thanks for joining me this Monday for Grok Talk, and we will talk again during the weekday and next Monday. Thanks. See ya.
Grok.